When I first started to learn about holistic and plant-based living, I had gotten into the alkaline and raw vegan lifestyle, which I did share on an episode of Life with Alexis Griswold. At the time, I had believed that it was the only right way to eat, and I didn't realize that there's so many other ways of eating from different cultures, each with their own wisdom and healing perspective. Without meaning to, I had become very closed off to any other approaches, and I stepped out of one mental cage around food and unknowingly placed myself into another one. I started programming myself with everything I was watching and learning, thinking it was the ultimate truth, and I had built a new paradigm for myself that ended up being more restrictive than the one I had left behind. Fast forward to today, I have opened my mind up to a much broader, more balanced understanding of plant-based living. I have been learning about different healing systems from different cultures, like Ayurveda, a holistic approach to health from India that's been around for over 5,000 years and is rooted in Vedic philosophy. I've also been exploring macrobiotics, which originated from Japan, and it draws from traditional Chinese medicine and Zen Buddhism, and it was introduced to the West by philosopher George Osawa and later expanded by Michio Kushi. Learning about these new ways of eating has helped me reconnect with food in a much more intuitive, grounded, and open way. It's not about eating one perfect way, it's about understanding what supports your specific body the best. If you guys have seen my previous vlogs, then you would already know that I've been on the journey to figuring out how to heal my gut the holistic way. And I have now successfully healed my gut. I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about how all of this even started with my gut in the first place. When I first decided to heal my skin from acne the holistic way, I started taking herbal teas that were prescribed to me by a holistic doctor, which I shared in an episode of Life with Alexis Griswold. And at the same time, I had transitioned my diet to the alkaline diet. And before that, I was eating a more typical vegan diet, lots of processed food, but honestly, I felt great. I had no digestive issues at all, and I was honestly thriving. But about 7 months into drinking the herbal teas and eating mostly alkaline and more raw foods, I started to experience extreme bloating. So I had brought it up with my holistic doctor, and she told me that this had never happened to any of her patients before. She asked me if anything in my diet changed, and I had told her no, because I honestly didn't think the new way of eating could be the issue. I was so convinced that this was the best way to eat, so I just assumed that it had to be the teas. She then lowered my intake to just 1 pouch a day, but nothing changed. So eventually I just stopped drinking the teas altogether because my skin had cleared, and I figured if I stopped taking them, then my bloating would go away, but it did not. Looking back now, I believe it was a combination of things. I introduced a new herbal remedy, as well as dramatically changing the types of foods I was eating. My gut just wasn't used to it, and it was a lot of new at once, as well as not knowing how to eat in a balanced way. As many of you saw in my previous AG vlogs, I was trying to heal my gut through an alkaline and raw vegan approach. Lots of fruits, smoothies, juices, herbal teas, and alkaline foods. But the truth is, none of that was ever working for me. I gave it a full year, hoping something would shift, but it never did. So eventually, I just hit a point where I was so exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally. One day, I was so fed up and I just didn't know what to do anymore, so I sat in silence and I prayed. I said, please help me, show me the way, I don't know what to do, but I'm open to something new. And then a few days later, a video on YouTube popped up of candida and gut healing. And at the time, I had never heard of candida before, but as I watched the video and I heard the symptoms described, I was thinking, wait, I think this is what I have. That moment led me into what became the candida phase of my gut cleanse, and then not long after, I finally took a biome test, and sure enough, it confirmed I had candida overgrowth, as well as dysbiosis, leaky gut, and IBS-C. So that YouTube video was the guidance that I had prayed for. So from my personal experiences, prayer does work, but we also have to be open and aware of how the answers might show up. Because I could have easily ignored that video, but because I was ready to receive, it changed the course of my healing journey. So this is the first phase of my gut cleanse. I share everything I did to kill the overgrowth with some notes, as well as I shared the food I was eating, because when you're getting the overgrowth under control, you have to follow a candida safe diet, because certain foods like sugars, even natural sugars, certain grains, starches, they can all feed the bad bacteria, and these remedies can also help with parasites if you struggle with that. So I'm going to go over some of my posts with you guys. So this is the first post, week 1, the detox phase, killing off overgrowth and resetting the balance. So I first share what I did in the morning to help kill the overgrowth. I used oil of oregano, and you can probably just put this in some water. You don't need to do the olive oil and all of that unless you want to. Then I share how oil of oregano helps with candida, and then just share some of the things I was eating. And then I'm taking coconut oil. Coconut oil helps get rid of the overgrowth as well. Then I share how coconut oil helps with candida. Then just more stuff I was eating. Then back to the oil of oregano, more foods, back to the coconut oil, and then the slippery elm powder. Whenever I show slippery elm on my candida phase of my healing guide, I would say to leave out the aloe vera juice and the marshmallow root powder. Just do 1 teaspoon of slippery elm powder with half a cup of warm water, because when you take the slippery elm on its own with just water, it allows it to form more of a mucilaginous texture, which is better for your gut, because when I was putting it with the aloe vera juice or the marshmallow root, it wasn't able to form that texture as well, so I feel like it wasn't as beneficial as it could have been. And then I just share the benefits of slippery elm powder before bed. Then I share more food, and then I give some tips while using these natural remedies, and then I also share my experience in week 1. And then this is what my gut was looking like in the beginning when I would eat basically anything. I said I get bloated after everything I eat. At one point, I was taking a lot of different herbal remedies at once, and I just want to say, be really mindful about that. I was overwhelming my system without even realizing it, and a lot of these herbs can be very stimulating. If I could go back, I would probably skip taking the midday teas, and I would just stick to the morning remedies and the evening remedies to give my body more space to breathe. But most importantly, I want to remind you to have your own discernment. Only take the remedies that resonate with you. Try things out slowly and listen to how your body responds. You don't have to follow exactly what I did. I was just figuring it out as I went, and you'll be able to do that too. Now for the second part of my healing guide. This was the most exciting part for me because it was when I started to learn about Ayurveda and macrobiotics, as well as incorporating low FODMAP portion sizes, which ended up helping with my bloating the most. So in this post, I share how I'm going from eating a candida diet to now the low FODMAP diet, and then I explain all of that, like what is a low FODMAP diet. And then I also share what I was eating and the remedies I was continuing to take or what I switched up. A bunch of notes about what I was going through at the time, my symptoms, another update photo, more food. Give lots of detail there. I tried to make all of this as informative as I possibly could and explain everything the easiest I could. And then I have this post where I share everything I learned from Ayurveda, what Ayurveda and Agni is. Ayurveda is an ancient healing practice from India that views gut health as the foundation of overall well-being. It focuses on keeping the digestive fire, Agni, strong to prevent toxins, Ama, from building up. Gut healing in Ayurveda includes eating warm, simple foods, using spices like fennel and cumin, and following daily habits that supports balance and regular elimination. Agni is a Sanskrit word meaning fire, and in Ayurveda it refers to the digestive fire and metabolic intelligence that governs all transformation in the body and being. It's how you digest food, but also how you process emotions, experiences, and spiritual energy. More than just digestion, Agni is the core life force that fuels healing, clarity, and balance in the mind, body, and soul. And next slide. Okay, if I mispronounce any of these words, forgive me. In Ayurveda, there are 13 main types of Agni, digestive and metabolic fires, in the body, divided into 3 main categories. Jathara Agni, the main digestive fire in the stomach and small intestines that break down food. Then Buddha Agni is the part of digestion that breaks down food into its basic elements like earth, water, fire, air, and ether. This happens in the liver, and Agni is the 7 tissue fires that transform nutrients into the body's tissues like blood, muscle, bone, reproductive fluid, each stage working like a sacred fire in a multi-step alchemy that sustains your energy, body, and consciousness. When Agni, your main digestive fire, is weak or imbalanced, food doesn't break down properly. This can cause bloating, gas, heaviness, tiredness after meals, and a buildup of toxins in the body. When Buddha Agni, the elemental fires in the liver, aren't functioning well, the body struggles to process the subtle energies in food. Even if digestion seems okay, the nutrients don't get fully refined. This can lead to feeling emotionally ungrounded, inflamed, or off balance. When Agni, the tissue fires, are disturbed, the nutrients don't fully nourish the body's tissues. This can show up as weak muscles, low energy, dry skin, poor immunity, or hormonal imbalances. And then the next slide is to heal Agni. Ayurveda focuses on keeping digestion gentle, warm, and consistent. And then I just share some notes here on how to do that. And then the next slide is best meal timing according to Agni. Then I just give details on when the best timing is to eat according to the Agni, which is the digestive fire. And then on this slide is the 3 doshas. In Ayurveda, the doshas are the 3 energies or forces that make up how nature and our bodies function. They're called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Each person has a unique mix of all 3. Your dosha makeup, also called your constitution, helps explain your natural tendencies, like how you digest, how you respond to stress, and what throws you out of balance. When your doshas become imbalanced, that's often what leads to digestive issues, along with other physical or emotional symptoms. And then I share a breakdown of each of the doshas. So Vata is made of air and ether, and its qualities are light, dry, cold, and fast. It governs all movement in the body, including the nervous system, breathing, circulation, and elimination. It's the dosha responsible for creativity, inspiration, and adaptability when in balance. Vata is the most easily unbalanced dosha, often disrupted by overstimulation, stress, irregular routines, and inconsistent eating. It has a quick variable metabolism and tends to burn through food rapidly, making regular meals essential. Fasting or having meals spaced too far apart can worsen Vata imbalances, leading to low blood sugar, fatigue, dizziness, anxiety, bloating, constipation, and gas. To stay balanced, Vata types need grounding, warm, cooked foods, healthy fats, and a steady daily rhythm. Now for the next one, Pitta. Pitta is made of fire and water, with qualities that are hot, sharp, light, and intense. It governs digestion, metabolism, and transformation in both the body and mind. When balanced, Pitta brings strong intellect, ambition, leadership, and clarity. But when Pitta becomes excessive, often due to stress, overheating, spicy foods, or excessive striving, it can lead to inflammation, irritability, heartburn, acid reflux, loose stools, and skin issues like acne, rosacea, or rashes. Pitta types typically have a strong appetite and don't do well skipping meals. But unlike Vata, they can sometimes benefit from short, structured fasting if the body is cool and grounded. To stay balanced, Pitta needs cooling foods, calming routines, and time in nature to release excess heat and intensity. Now for the last one, Kapha. Kapha is made of earth and water, with qualities that are heavy, slow, steady, cool, and moist. It governs structure, stability, lubrication, and emotional calm in the body and mind. When balanced, Kapha provides strength, endurance, compassion, and groundedness. But when it becomes excessive, often from overeating, lack of movement, or too much routine, it can lead to sluggish digestion, weight gain, congestion, lethargy, and emotional heaviness or resistance to change. Kapha types tend to have slower metabolisms and may benefit from lighter meals, stimulating spices, and occasional fasting to keep energy flowing. To stay balanced, they need movement, variety, and foods that are warm, light, and drying. And then I say this. Each person is born with a unique mix of 3 doshas, also known as their prakriti or natural constitution. While all 3 are present in everyone, 1 or 2 are usually more dominant and shape your body type, personality, digestion, and tendencies towards imbalance. Understanding your dominant doshas help you choose the right foods, lifestyle, and healing practices for your specific needs. You can discover your constitution through online dosha quizzes, working with a Ayurvedic practitioner, or by reflecting on your physical traits, emotional patterns, and digestion. You can also explore your dosha guidance from ChatGPT by describing your body, digestion, personality, energy levels, and symptoms. That's what I did. You'll get a personalized response to help you begin your Ayurvedic journey. ChatGPT has been helping me understand my body and symptoms so much during my whole healing journey. I ask it so many questions which help me figure out the best steps to take next. I would definitely recommend being open to it. It's low-key my doctor at this point. But I also have to say, be careful with ChatGPT because sometimes it will tell you the wrong answers. It's told me the wrong answers a few times and led me the wrong way. But that's why we study, because we gotta know more than ChatGPT sometimes. And sometimes you gotta ask it multiple questions in certain ways, and then you figure out the answer yourself without it telling you the direct answer, if you know what I mean by that. But yeah, ChatGPT has been a really big help, but like I said, be careful with it because it might not always be accurate. And then the next slide, I give you guys an example. My natural constitution is Vata-Pitta, with a current Vata imbalance, bloating and overstimulation, and some mild Pitta elevation from past skin issues like acne, mild acid reflux, and inflammation. So now I focus on eating in a way that calms Vata and soothes Pitta. Warming, grounding, easy to digest meals, cooked fruits and veggies, soothing spices like cinnamon and fennel, avoiding acidic, overly spicy, or stimulating foods like citrus or cacao, staying in rhythm, eating more consistently and at regular times, chewing slowly and listening to what my body needs in the current moment. And then I just give a little bit more information on Agni and the doshas and how that works together. Then I share a little bit of my own experience. And then I share the CFC digestive spice blend that you can use with cooking or even use it as a herbal tea. And then I just give more details on that. And then this part was super interesting and it helped me a lot learning about this. So learning about Ayurveda and the doshas helped me become more aware of the energy and elements that food carries. Not just in terms of nutrition, but in how it feels in the body and affects digestion. Every food has a certain quality, like cooling, heating, drying, or grounding, and what works for one person might not work for another. Understanding this has helped me eat in a way that supports my own healing. Here are a few examples of how food affects the body energetically. Cooling foods help calm inflammation and heat in the body. Examples: cucumber, coconut, mint, papaya, watermelon, zucchini, cilantro, lion's mane, oyster mushrooms. These help soothe Pitta, can calm Vata if not too cold or raw, but may worsen sluggishness in Kapha if overused. Warming foods gently support digestion and circulation without being too intense. Examples include cooked carrots, cooked bananas or apples, cinnamon, cardamom, sweet potato, quinoa, and ginger tea. These foods are grounding and balancing for Vata and Kapha, but should be used in moderation for Pitta types, who can overheat more easily. Oily, moist foods add softness, lubrication, and nourishment to the body. Examples include avocado, papaya, almond butter, cooked oats, rice, hemp seeds. These foods are soothing and grounding for Vata, helping to keep elimination smooth and tissues well lubricated. They also benefit Pitta in moderation, but can aggravate Kapha if overused due to their heavier, denser qualities. Then I just share more on the next slide of drying foods, heating foods, and heavy and damp foods and the examples with those. Then I say, if you have a mixed dosha imbalance, like Vata Pitta or Kapha Vata, you'll need to find a middle path, choosing foods and routines that don't aggravate one while soothing the other. It's all about balancing the elements, not too hot, not too cold, not too light, not too heavy. Ayurveda teaches us to listen closely and adjust based on what's showing up in the body that day. And then the next slide, I just talk about how Ayurveda and low-FODMAP work together for gut healing. And then the next slide is, I'm looking at this stage of my gut healing as regrowing the soil of my gut. I'm rebuilding with grounding, gentle foods like oats, rice, carrots, sweet potatoes, and quinoa, foods that nourish and strengthen my foundation. Once that inner soil is strong, my body will be able to handle all of the high vibrational sunlight foods such as fruits, sprouts, as well as other nutrient-dense foods like legumes and nuts without any backlash or sensitivity. Because if your Agni is weak, you can eat all the healthy foods in the world and still feel unwell. Healing begins not just with what you eat, but how your body transforms it into nourishment and fuel. And then I share some videos to check out. I also have a lot of videos I'm sharing in my plant-based playlist on my channel, on this channel, and you guys can check out everything I learned about Ayurveda as well as macrobiotics. So that's all I'm going to share for that post. If you guys want to see more, you can go check it out. After learning all of that and then applying it, it helped me break my paradigm around raw foods and fasting, especially intermittent fasting. Learning about the digestive fire, my dosha imbalances, and my natural constitution through Ayurveda, it helped me understand that my body actually needed warm, cooked foods to heal and more consistent meals throughout the day. That realization was such a breakthrough moment for me, and it felt very freeing. I had finally got rid of the belief that raw food is the purest or the best, and that fasting or eating less is the ultimate way to heal. And to be honest, I never really enjoyed eating raw food that much, and fasting never felt aligned with me. Fasting has become a big trend, and while it can be powerful for some, it's not the only path. And it's definitely not the only way to achieving spiritual discipline, enlightenment, healing, or inner clarity. The answers that you are searching for are already within yourself, and you don't have to deprive your body to find them. And like I've shared, you can always pray for guidance. I also learned that if your body is already in a sensitive, depleted state, or if you're already healthy, constant fasting can actually push your body into survival mode, which then does more harm than good. But if fasting resonates with you and works, then that's still great. Just always have your own discernment and listen to your body. So even though I started to break away from that old paradigm, I still found myself holding on to certain beliefs, especially around alkaline approved foods like nuts, seeds, and fruits, until I came across macrobiotics, and then everything started to click even more. And I do have a post on this that I will share. The microbiotic lifestyle for healing. What is the microbiotic lifestyle? The microbiotic lifestyle is a way of living and eating that supports balance, simplicity, and natural healing. Rooted in ancient Eastern wisdom and widely practiced in Japan, it focuses on whole, seasonal foods like grains, vegetables, legumes, and sea vegetables, all prepared in ways that are gentle on the body and nourishing to the soul. At the heart of macrobiotics is the understanding of yin and yang, the dynamic energies of expansion and contraction, light and grounding, cooling and warming. By choosing foods that balance these energies, we support deeper harmony in the body, digestion, emotion, and overall energy flow. It's not just about food, it's about aligning with nature, eating mindfully, and living in rhythm with the cycles of life. Microbiotic cooking. Microbiotic cooking is all about balance, using food and preparation methods to support harmony in the body, mind, and energy. Every cooking style, roasting, slow cooking, raw, steaming, carries different yin, expansive, or yang, contractive qualities, and affects our organs, moods, and healing in unique ways. For example, raw carrots have a cooling, liver cleansing effect, while roasted carrots become warming and sweet, which calm the stomach. Cooking becomes a form of alchemy, not just preparing food, but transforming its nature to match what your body needs. By adjusting how we cook and eat, we can bring our whole system back into balance and use food as daily medicine. Macrobiotics teaches you to adjust your meals to match what your body needs today. Learn to cook for healing, and you learn how to heal yourself. Next slide, yin and yang. In macrobiotics, yin and yang are the two fundamental energies that exist in all things, including food, cooking methods, and even our emotions. Yin is more expansive, cooling, light, and moistening. Think raw fruits, sugar, alcohol, while yang is more contracting, warming, dense, and grounding, like salt, meat, or baked root vegetables. Too much of either creates imbalance in the body. For example, if we're overly yin, feeling spacey, cold, or bloated, we can balance with warming, grounding foods, like miso soup or roasted squash. If we're overly yang, tight, overheated, or tense, we might need gentle, cooling foods like lightly steamed greens or pressed salads. The goal isn't to label food as good or bad, but to understand their energetic nature and choose what brings us back to center. Balance is healing. This yin and yang perspective in macrobiotics beautifully mirrors what I've already shared with you from Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, we look at qualities like hot and cold, light and heavy, and moist and dry, which are very similar to the energetics of yin and yang. Both practices teach us to tune into the present state of our body and choose foods, cooking methods, and daily rhythms that help bring us back into balance. For example, a Pitta imbalance, which tends to be hot, sharp, and intense, is much like excess yang. In both Ayurveda and Macrobiotics, we would support that state with cooling, calming, and hydrating meals. These ancient healing traditions may use different terms, but they share the same core wisdom. Healing begins when we align with nature and listen to what our bodies need. Next slide. Yin, yang, and doshas. A pitta imbalance creates a yang type state, hot, sharp, and intense. It usually needs yin qualities, like cooling, calming, and hydrating nourishment. A vata imbalance reflects both yin and yang qualities. It's cold and dry like yin, but also light, scattered, and fast like yang. When vata is out of balance, it can dry out the body's fluids, yin, and disturb the body's inner warmth and flow of energy, yang. This often leads to feeling both depleted and overstimulated, dry, anxious, and ungrounded. To restore balance, vata benefits from yin elements like moisture, healthy oils, and soft hydrating foods, as well as yang elements like warm cooked meals and hearty grounding ingredients. Next slide, yin and yang imbalances. Then I go over yin deficiency, excess yang, yang deficiency, excess yin, and then I said, to understand your imbalance, it helps to look at the full picture. This includes body temperature, energy levels, moisture, digestion, emotional patterns. By understanding these patterns, you can start to notice what's really happening underneath your symptoms. Knowing whether you're dealing with a yin or yang imbalance, or even a mix of both, and how your dosha constitution plays into it, can guide you toward the right food, remedies, and habits that restore balance. Next slide. Yang food examples. Contractive, warming, grounding. Too much equals tension, heat, inflammation, and rigidity. Extreme yang foods. Animal products, refined salt, hard-baked flour products. Moderate yang, supportive for gut and grounding. Miso, tamari, umeboshi, kuzu, cooked root vegetables, carrots, sweet potatoes, azuku beans, cooked tofu, mild yang, tempeh, more yang, pickled vegetables, roasted sesame seeds, warm spices like ginger. Next slide. Yin food examples. Expansive, cooling, dispersing. Too much equals weak digestion, spaciness, coldness, and bloating. Extreme yin, raw tropical fruits, raw veggies, refined sugar, alcohol, coffee, ice, frozen foods. Moderate yin, supportive for gut and grounding. Cooked fruits, bananas, peaches, apples. Lightly cooked leafy greens, cucumbers, tomatoes, zucchini, avocado, soy milk, almond milk, olive oil or other oils, herbal teas depending on the herb, seaweed, more yin than land vegetables but still healing. Then the next slide, more balanced foods closer to center, ideal for daily healing. Short grain brown rice, oats, slightly yin, cooked oats are fairly centered, millet, moong dal, cabbage, onions if tolerated, toasted sesame oil in small amounts, bancha twig tea, kabocha squash, miso with cooked veg and seaweed. Then the next slide, I love this slide. This is yin yang and polarity. Polarity is the principle that everything exists as pair of opposites, light and dark, hot and cold, masculine and feminine. Similarly, yin and yang describe the dynamic interplay between these opposing yet complementary forces. Yin equals the feminine, receptive, cold, soft, inward moon. Yang equals masculine, active, hot, firm, outward, sun. In both macrobiotics and traditional Chinese philosophy, yin and yang are not fixed categories. A food, emotion, or even a time of day isn't always strictly yin or yang. Instead, they are relative energies that shift depending on context, and they can transform into each other to maintain balance. For example, early morning is more yin, but as the sun rises, the day shifts towards yang. Raw tofu is more yin, cooling, soft, moist. When pan-fried or baked, it becomes more yang, warming, dense, and dry. A salty meal, yang, might make you crave dessert, yin. This shows the body constantly seeking polarity balance. Next slide. So instead of thinking this is yin and always will be, it's more accurate to see yin and yang as a dance or flow, always changing based on environment, actions, and internal states. This aligns with the idea of polarity in Hermetic or universal laws, where duality is not conflict, but rather an invitation to find harmony. Yin and yang define each other. One cannot exist without the other. They are two ends of the same spectrum, and health or balance comes from their harmonious integration. Polarity explains that opposites exist. Yin and yang show us how to live in balance between them. And then the next slide, since microbiotics is all about balance, this chart represents the general structure of overall diet that supports healing and harmony. So then there's a little chart and it says 50 to 60% whole grain, 5 to 10% beans, 5 to 10% soups and sea veggies, and 20 to 30% vegetables, with the occasional inclusion of nuts, seeds, and fruits. In microbiotics, fruits are generally seen as more as a light dessert or occasional treat, rather than a main part of daily meals. So this is the opposite of what I was learning and going by. Next slide. Fruits, nuts, and seeds are often considered more expansive or yin in nature, especially tropical fruits. When eaten in excess, they may be seen as too cooling, light, or ungrounding, which can throw off internal balance and weaken digestion, which is what happened to me. That's why they're typically eaten sparingly, mindfully, and often paired with grounding foods. On the other hand, animal products like meat and dairy are seen as very yang, dense, contractive, and heavy on the body. In microbiotics, too much yang energy can lead to stagnation, tension, and imbalance over time. Because of this, many microbiotic approaches either minimize or avoid animal products altogether, focusing instead on plant-based sources of nourishment that are easier to digest and more harmonizing to the system. And then the next slide, I just share some foods that are really big in microbiotics. The first one is short grain brown rice. I give a bunch of details on that. Next slide is millet, give a bunch of details on that. Then the next slide, how microbiotics views protein. In microbiotics, protein is viewed very differently than in modern Western nutrition. Rather than something we need to consume in large amounts, it's seen as just one part of a balanced whole. Instead of making protein the main focus of every meal, microbiotics emphasizes variety, getting nourishment from many food groups to support overall harmony. Beans and certain whole grains like brown rice, millet, and buckwheat are seen as the primary source of daily protein. Foods like tofu and tempeh are considered more concentrated and are treated almost like medicinal proteins meant to be eaten just 1 to 3 times a week in small amounts to support the body without overloading it. This gentle, mindful approach helps keep the system light, clean, and well balanced. Our view on protein is a big paradigm shift we are all needing to have as well. I love the way microbiotics views protein and how I explained it right here. The next slide is adzuki beans, which is another staple in microbiotics. I just give some information about that. And then another one is kombu, big staple in microbiotics. And then in the last slides, I share my personal experience, which I'm basically talking to you guys about right here. So after learning all of that was the moment when my paradigm around the alkaline diet started to shift the most. I realized that majority of the foods in the alkaline diet are very yin in nature, and from a more balanced perspective, that's not ideal. So then it started to make more sense to me and how eating that way contributed to throwing my body out of balance. I also started to see how the concept of polarity with yin and yang were playing out in our modern food trends. The alkaline diet reflects the extreme yin side of the spectrum, while the carnivore diet reflects the extreme yang side. And just like anything in nature, living in extremes doesn't create balance. And the dynamic of yin and yang is also reflected in the last hermetic principle, which is the principle of gender. And I actually haven't talked to you guys about this one yet. So the principle of gender states that masculine and feminine energy exists within all things, not just in people, but in nature, in actions, in our food, and so on. And just like with food and healing, balance happens within our bodies and in our lives when these forces are working together, not in isolation or opposition. There's a lot more that can go into this principle, but we'll talk about that another time. What I've come to learn and what I've been sharing is that we can find harmony and balance within a plant-based lifestyle. One thing that I love about macrobiotics is that it not only honors that balance, but it also acknowledges the harm that animal products can have on our bodies. This aligned with what I've already been sharing throughout my content. Another powerful teaching from the microbiotic lifestyle is the idea that we are what we eat. Our food doesn't just affect our physical health, but it also shapes our emotions, our thoughts, our actions, and our state of mind. When we look at the fact that most of the world is consuming a highly animal-based diet, it starts to make sense why there's so much suffering, chaos, and disconnection in the world. If we're constantly putting death and suffering on our plates, that same energy is going to ripple out into society. War, racism, sexism, separation, all of it, in many ways, stems from what we consume on both a physical and energetic level. This ties into what I've shared with you guys about the principle of correspondence, that the micro reflects the macro. So when we are choosing to kill and eat animals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which is the micro action, it reflects on a larger scale. The macro action of that would be the wars, the separation, the racism, the sexism, and the disconnection that we have from our earth and from ourselves. This is where knowledge is power comes into play, because once we can understand this, to really see how and why all of this is happening, we realize that we're not victims to some outside force. We are the cause to much of our own suffering through our daily choices, and that also means that we have the power to change it. This is our world, we are all creating it together, and it doesn't have to be like this. We are powerful, we are conscious now, and we are remembering who we are. Holistic healing is about getting to the root cause of disease, not just healing symptoms. And that same approach goes to healing our world. If we want to shift the collective, then we have to start with what we choose to put into our bodies. That's where the change begins. With all that being said, I am so grateful for this entire journey. It taught me so much about different ways of healing, the wisdom of plant medicine, the energy and elements that live within our food, and how to eat with intention and connection. One of the most powerful lessons was learning about the balance of yin and yang and how to bring that into the way I eat. I never expected healing to become such a core part of my brand, but it unfolded so naturally. And it was definitely challenging to create this healing guide and to heal my gut, but it was also rewarding. I had so much fun exploring and experimenting and learning along the way. I hope this healing guide can help any of you guys out there who are navigating imbalances, or if you're just curious about how to connect with your body more and eat in a way that supports your natural constitution. We are capable of breaking our old paradigms around food and eat to live, where we can all thrive in a world without disease.